Kast, head of accounts here at Draft.dev. We are joined today by Cole Stark and Carl McCarthy. Both are pros in our topics. A topic that we're covering today: influencer marketing and effective use of Dev Evangelist. That word is going to trip me up at least 3 more times before the end of the call. But more specifically, developer marketing landscape and the role influencers are playing in it these days. Strategies for identifying, collaborating with those influencers, and then finally, how do you build a successful influencer campaign and ultimately driving KPIs and results? Get a little bit more info on our guests here today. Cole Stark, CMO over at Pieces, great dev tool related to code snippet sharing and saving. They are incredible with their dev marketing over there. If you want to see a great example of how to speak to your developers, go check out the work Cole does over at Pieces. They are always on top of it. Like he was just speaking to, they just launched a new podcast. They've got a lot of other material. I'm sure it's all shared on his LinkedIn along with their website. And then Carl McCarthy runs an agency that is actually focused on our subject today. He founded Yard Live. Check out their website. And like I said, influencer marketing is what they do day in and day out. It's what Carl's focused on. So it'll be a great resource to speak to today. So thank you both for joining. Really appreciate it.
Cheers, Clayton.
The intro.
Yeah. So I like to start off high level, then we'll get into the nitty gritty. Let's keep it basic and maybe a little oversimplified with this first question. But when it comes to the technical space, dev tool space, the area where we work in, what are the key differences between like what you would say your traditional social media influencer or marketing influencer and what we see in our space, which we refer to as a dev evangelist?
I'll take this one and kind of ease our way in. So for your your standard influencer, it's all about reach and kind of being friend to many people. But with technical influencers and B2B influencers, it's your depth of knowledge and your authority. They don't have many swings at shilling products. The trust between them and their audience is just paramount. So whilst for a traditional influencer selling, a perfume or whatever, being kind of broad strokes in terms of the use cases, is so different to a technical influencer who has, through blood, sweat, and tears, built up their YouTube audience, and they are super selective on what products they engage with. It's a real kind of leap of faith for them, and also they just can't fake it. They have to engage with a product they genuinely believe in and it solves a problem that they've actually lived in. If they try to fake it, it comes across super quick. And for the most part, they're professional, so they just will say no anyway. So yeah, that's my kind of top line thoughts.
Yeah. When, people think of traditional influencers, they often think of unboxings, right? Like it's a live stream. They're opening up this physical box that contains a bag that some company bought for them so they could pull it out and say, oh wow, this is so cool. And there's also sort of an aspect of unboxing for technical products as well. And we've tried this, and it was an interesting sort of approach, and it still is every time we do it, where we'll hop on with a user of Pieces and ask them to unbox our software, right? So there's nothing you can actually unbox, but before we actually hop on the call and record it, we'll ask them, just take a look at our documentation. Don't actually download the product yet, because we want to get these first impressions. And then we'll hop on with them. We'll watch them go, download, install the product, and actually go through onboarding so we can see in real time any feedback, any spots where they're tripping up on the onboarding. So this is really good engineering feedback for us. But as well, their initial impressions of, oh, wow, this feature is really cool. And seeing that sort of magic moment in real time of, okay, this could actually improve my workflow in X way. And that's good sort of video content for us to repurpose for our own channels. But, beyond that sort of interesting crossover between the two, I think it's very different, as Carl was saying. It's a lot more niche with technical influencers, and even so, I've talked to some influencers who say that dev influencer is kind of a pejorative. It's kind of a word that they don't like to be called, because you want to be seen as an actual developer, right? And
totally.
So you don't want to be labeled as just an influencer. You want to be someone who is an expert in their field, and they're able to create in-depth guides and pieces of content that can actually, go deeper on a more technical product.
Yeah. We'll see people struggling to hire developer relations because they're trying to put out a price tag or a salary out there that is at what you would cap a marketing person at. I feel like it comes back to the same thing. It's like, no, I'm a developer first. This is my level of expertise. There is no BSing this. It just goes back to that common theme you find in developer marketing of you sort of have to throw out like the traditional marketing playbook and just really rely on people's in-depth knowledge and expertise within the space.
Mm-hmm.
So it's defining what they are. Let's now define what it means to the actual organization. So when it comes to working at dev tool spaces, the tech space, what is the role that actual individual is playing on a day-to-day out basis? Like, how do you each view it when it comes to the daily task? What's their position within the organization?
Take that one, Kyle.
Yeah, sure. So, I've heard from our new head of developer advocacy and some other people that we were interviewing for that role, the 3 C's of a developer advocate sort of day to day, and that's coding, content, and community. And so, in most cases, a developer and evangelist's role is to have all 3, and you don't want to necessarily go too deep on one and forget about the other, but essentially it depends on your goals as an organization, how you want to leverage developer advocates to help expand your brand. Maybe it's just trying to get reach, so you're working with many different developer advocates and having them write on their own blogs, for example, their experience with your product, or simply, trying to get more developer advocates to tweet about your product and include you in some of those listicles when they are talking about, the top 5 best developer productivity tools, for example. But ultimately, community is really important. You want to make sure that you are cultivating a space where developers, they want to hang out, they want to talk to the other people in the community and learn about your product and talk about other things as well. So sort of the home base for pieces is Discord. And so developer advocates can help us to field some of the questions that our users have in the Discord channels, helping them to, fix issues or document bugs they might have come across, or, handle issues on our open source GitHub repositories, things like that. And then also something that I don't want to leave out is the feedback loop, right? So developer advocates are sort of on the front lines of your organization, and they're talking to users, they're DMing people on social media, they're maybe going to conferences and talking about your product or what have you. They're talking with a lot of the audience, your core audience members. And so understanding what the community is saying about your product and, fielding that sentiment and being able to get real tangible, feedback that you can bring over to your engineering team and develop your roadmap based on that feedback.
Yeah. That's so true. That feedback loop is so important, especially like at conferences, and you'll get that feedback that you won't get anywhere else, and side hall chats. But one of the other things is in identifying your evangelists, your advocates, with communities, it's always like that 2% or 5% who are constantly putting their hand up. Like they're the ultras, the super fans. And so to identify them early and give them all the tools and support and swag or whatever, dinners, everything you can, just to support them and make them feel loved is super important. And also for them to be as transparent with you as possible, because sometimes, when all this love is coming your way, you don't want to say anything bad about the product. But if you have very frank conversations with, by the way, that latest thing sucked and everyone in the community is not happy about it, and that's why there's crickets in whatever a Discord about a certain topic, then yeah, that's worth its weight in gold.
Yeah,
I feel like, oh, go ahead, Cole.
I was just going to say, we haven't had any problem getting negative feedback. There's always, I think the developers are in most cases willing to tell you what they're thinking. And
I was going to say, it's one of the beautiful parts of this audience. They'll be very frank with you. Like, we always warn clients post on Reddit. They're like, just be ready. Like, you're going to get feedback real quick. they'll let you know. Sure. Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and the level of intensity, just kind of going onto the influencer side of thing, YouTube is kind of quite happy clappy, it's quite friendly, and then all of a sudden as you move into TikTok, and oh man, if you put a little toe out of place, they will just come down on you like a ton of bricks, which is wild.
But hey, if you learn how to take it in stride, like exactly growth moment, they'll love you even more. Like we have tech reviewers for our content here at Draft.dev. A lot of them almost become accidental advocates for some of the clients we work with because they respond so well when we're like, hey, your documentation is making it really difficult for me to figure out how to use your product. Or, hey, your quick start guide isn't so quick start. When they take that feedback and work with them, the next thing you know, our tech reviewers are using some of these products in their daily life. It's just great. Honestly, on that same path, like really, I think most people would be like one of the most efficient ways to find good influencers is like the 2 to 5% that are already raising their hands, like you were speaking to, Carl. So how do you guys feel is the best way to maybe identify and nurture these potential hand raisers within your communities?
Yeah, I think when dev tool companies are dipping their toe in this water, my first protocol, my advice is to explore your first connections, people you know or are very closely related to. It's a huge trust thing, because you're giving your little baby over to them, and then they're gonna do what they do, which is it could be a warts and all type video, and so yeah, I would first explore like within your team. Does anyone know anyone who has a profile? Is there anyone internally in our team that we can use? Most of the time there isn't, because it's all about distribution. And then after that, it's pretty agricultural. You can just go into YouTube, be creative with the search terms. Don't go too niche. Look for, like, if you have a good sense of what people are searching for when looking for your type of product, it might not be the obvious search term. See what topics are popping, so to speak, and you can just contact an influencer on YouTube. You can get their email straight off YouTube. It's very, very simple. Craft a kind of a thoughtful, hey, blah, 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 actually something that rather than all the other dross that they get, because they will have a lot of inbound. And then, keep an eye on if a certain video, it outperforms a lot more than anything else, and then try and correlate that against. But yeah, I would keep it, to begin with, I was fairly agricultural in your approach, just a lot of desktop research, and then build your list and then go from there. Don't get too down if no one replies. You just change your positioning and kind of go at it again.
Totally. I think it goes in stages. It's difficult in the early days. I've been at Pieces for about 1.5 years, and in that time we've changed and grown as a company and as a product a lot. We started out as just a code snippet manager, and then we introduced an AI co-pilot, and now you're able to take live context from your desktop and create really contextual prompts to get tailored assistance for your workflow, and so the feature set has been expanding, right? And so this is reaching new audiences. More people are starting to be interested in us because some people, they don't like to save code snippets. They're fine putting it in GitHub Gists or their Notes app or something like that, and some people don't use the Copilot. So it's reaching these different audiences. You find different people who are very passionate about one thing, and in the early days, they're not all coming out of the cracks. The inbound traffic of developers saying, hey, I want to work for you, or hey, I want to, talk about you on my socials. Like, will you throw me a couple bucks for that? It's a bit low at the beginning. So, like Carl said, you kind of have to go on YouTube and just do some outbound and sort of, it's almost like sales,
Absolutely. It's recruitment.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
Have you ever been in a situation where someone was maybe particularly vocal on submitting like support cases or providing, like I said, a lot of that maybe like constructive feedback, and then getting them to the point where like, okay, we see someone that's actively invested here, and almost flipping them towards being more of an evangelist for you?
I think that's one of the things that I love about marketing in the developer space is that, there's never a dull day. Developers are good at so many different things, and they all have these different preferences and skills. And so you kind of have to, you can't have a set sort of marketing strategy. It's always changing. It's a bit chaotic. And, that's why we're here. We love it. So people will come out. Some people, they are really good at unit testing, for example, and they want to, they love pieces, for example, and they want to help make a course about, how to use pieces to assist in creating better unit tests. And so you talk to them about, oh, let's make a Udemy course, for example. And there are all these different ideas being thrown around because developers, when they want to help and they want to do this out of the kindness of their hearts, or because they really believe in your product, they come up with, unique and interesting ways to support you, whether that's responding to Discord messages or, submitting issues on your open source, or they want to make a YouTube video about you, or just tweet about you a few times. So,
yeah. So when you see them start to raise their hand and they show propensity to that, like take on potential like influencer tasks for you guys, do you let them sort of identify what they're interested in and fill that role, or do you have areas where you're like, hey, could you guys help us out with this? We're sort of looking for assistance in this area, or is it a combo of the two?
It kind of depends. If they come to you with a really good idea, which they're passionate about, you're not going to say no. And you just let them do their own thing. Like they're creators in name. So you kind of just let them do their own thing. However, it is good to have a couple of creative prompts to hand. So like 3 or 4 and go, might be worth exploring this, 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 and this. So you're not being overly prescriptive, because if you are, then that kind of jars with their creative process. So by giving them multiple options, you can lead them down a path that you would like to see. Sometimes they'll come back and go, look, I've thought of something completely left field, worth exploring. And you go, sure, go for it. And, at the end of the day, they know their audience far better than you do. And so you have to trust their instinct and gut. And I will never tell a B2B influencer that they shouldn't do something that they feel very passionate about. You go, just do it.
Right. No, I agree. Even when it's published on our own blog, for example, we have this content partner program. Many developers, they like to write blog posts for our blog because we talk about so many different topics under these umbrella of AI and software development. And so we're sort of helping to define the channel that they want to go on. Where do they want to create the content? Is it for our own blog? Is it for their own YouTube? And then we'll sort of give information about, okay, what's the latest product release that we want to amplify out to the community? And we'll give them certain ideas. But ultimately, I believe that the most authentic piece of content is going to be created when you give them the flexibility to talk about it in the way that they've used it in their own daily lives. What are the use cases that they found useful for them? And that's going to come off a lot more authentic and genuine than, hey, you have to talk about this one thing, even if it's a thing that we're really trying to push at the moment.
Yeah, that's an interesting point as well. It's also when, say, if you're working, if the team at the company is working on an update, which feels like the world to, 100, 150 people, but when you present it to an influencer, they're like, yeah, it's okay. Well, they're more interested in actually the the problem you were solving to begin with, and it just doesn't mean that much to them, and that can be oh shit.
Yeah, it can be a learning moment, or like there's two ways to approach hearing that kind of feedback. Totally. So when it comes to this next question, is always it depends, but I like hearing how individuals dive into the it depends portion of this. What channels are you finding most effective when it comes to engaging and reaching these developers? Like I said, that likely depends on your brand, the area you're in, the tech involved, all that good stuff. But would love to hear both your opinions on it.
Sure. For YouTube is head and shoulders above everything else. It can create evergreen content. If you do catch lightning in a bottle, it can make your quarter. And so yeah, that's the kind of the big daddy in the room, which is YouTube, or the gorilla in the room. And then LinkedIn is something that I feel a lot of people are sleeping on at the moment. There's that cliche that developers are not on LinkedIn. They are, especially when you're going up higher up the food chain in terms of leadership. So, and especially in this market where budget holders are so important, and you need consensus both from a bottoms-up approach, the end user and leadership coming together and going, yes, this is actually a tool we want to use. Problem with LinkedIn is, it's mostly text-based, and so being able to guide B2B influencers along that path to create videos that are up to a level that you would be happy with can be a challenge. And then TikTok can work and has worked in the past from a bottoms-up approach. Young developers, and yeah, it's certainly, there's also really good ROI on that. And then Twitter's a bit of a black box. It's you can have your Twitter threads and things like that, but really YouTube is your first port of call.
I'm glad you called out LinkedIn though, because I'm one of the few non-devs at Draft, and I've marketed across a variety of industries, and devs are more active on LinkedIn than I've seen any other consumer group I've worked with. It weirded me out at first. I didn't understand. I was like, I didn't know people were using LinkedIn.
They just don't want to admit. They just don't want to admit.
Yeah,
they're all on it.
Yeah, totally. What about you, Cole?
Well, I come from an agency background. So I worked at a startup marketing agency for about 5 years, doing mostly SEO. And so, Clayton and Carl, you both know that I like these two channels because I've worked with you both in the past. Clayton, we created multiple blog posts for our own blog and optimized them around specific technical niche keywords that developers are searching for. Like how to minimize the cost of context switching was one of the articles. And that pays a lot of dividends because it's evergreen content. People are searching this. We give them unbiased information about the actual strategies, but we also talk about here's how Pieces, helps you to reduce context switching, which is really interesting sort of balance. And then Carl, we're working together right now on, identifying some YouTubers that can help create evergreen content on there. And there's also an SEO element of YouTube because, those videos are going to live on there forever. You put in the right title, the right description, and, make high quality content. It's going to be found over and over beyond just the initial sort of launch that you might get from, say, a newsletter send or something like that. So I love these evergreen channels, the places where you're getting not just sort of an announcement of a product or a feature, but an in-depth discussion of, long form content, because I do think that developers are willing to read, they have to read documentation and they have to get into the weeds. And so they're willing to watch a longer YouTube video about, hey, here's how you use Pieces to, generate unit tests or solve errors in your code or things like that, or read a long blog post. So I think those are the number 1 and 2 for Pieces in no particular order. I also agree, Twitter is quite nice because it provides, it's pretty authentic. I think there's a lot of word of mouth that goes down on Twitter. people discover new products on Twitter, and they're open to them because it's sort of this very rapid short form feed where they're seeing new tools, and then they might recall it later when they see it on YouTube. It's just another touch point, right? So I think you kind of need to hit all of these different touch points so that because developers, they probably won't actually visit your site and download your product and make a decision, even if it's free like Pieces, until they've seen it 5 or 6 times.
Yeah. It's subliminal as well. You're just all of a sudden you find yourself downloading an app. You can't figure out why. But you just know that a lot of people that you looked up to told you should.
I call Reddit effect happens on there a lot too. You're like, I've been seeing this on the front page a lot lately. So anytime you work with individuals, it leaves opportunity for misunderstanding, miscommunication, potential pitfalls. Like, what are some maybe common mistakes to try to avoid when diving into this form of marketing, or some of the pitfalls to keep an eye out for?
There's many. Where to begin? The reliability is a huge one. Is partnering with someone who will deliver within a certain time frame. And you're not talking about, so to put it in context, a lot of these influencers, this isn't their full-time job. They are working a full-time job. They have, maybe they have family or whatever. Life happens. And then your gig gets moved down the ladder real quick. And so with that in mind, you just make sure you have a couple of get to know each other calls, and you'll get a sense, use your spidey senses to figure out whether this person is kind of overwhelmed. You can also see by their channels whether they're taking on too many collaborations. That's a bit of a red flag as well, because there's only so many times you can say, check out this amazing product I just found. It doesn't go down very well. And then being really clear with contracts and things like that. For the most part, affiliates in like your traditional influencer marketing, affiliate kind of type links is one of the triggers. For B2B influencers, it's more like fixed sum, but you need to have some performance-based clauses as well to make sure they do a really, really good job. So there's a few things there. And then also just comms. Like, we put so many people into Slack channels and connect people. We have like 400 Slack channels going on at the moment. It's like a Christmas tree. And that's the only way to get things done, is just be on them all the time. Because if you start to get slippage, people disappear for 2 or 3 weeks, and then things get a little bit spicy.
Totally.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of trial and error, and I suppose if we're talking in the context of YouTube developer advocacy, where there's more involved in creating and having a collaboration on YouTube, right? They have to make a 10-minute video, 5 to 20-minute video. Yeah, you never know, but I think long-term engagements are great. If you send a cold outreach to a content creator on YouTube and they get back to you quickly, but they say, let's do we can do a 30-second pre-roll ad.
Just about to say,
for $10,000.
Run away.
Let me know if you want to get started. It's kind of a red flag, right? Like, you want to have these authentic engagements. These are people at the end of the day, right? Like, you want to know what kind of content they would create for you. They should be asking you questions about what's your goal in creating this type of content. Are you trying to educate your audience, just get brand awareness with a quick video? So a little bit of a red flag to jump into things. I love to hop on a call with creators and ultimately demo the product and talk about it. I want to be able to showcase, like, okay, here's how you might be able to use it in your workflow based on, the types of videos that you're making. I can tell that you might be doing this type of development. Here's how you might be able to use Pieces, and see how interested they are in actually using the tool for themselves. Because, back to the sort of authenticity aspect, I think if a content creator, says, okay, let me try your product, see if I like it, and I'll come back to you, I think that's perfect. I say, okay, like take 2 weeks, take 3 weeks if you want, try it out, download the app, use it. If you don't like it, then that's totally fine. We don't have to do a collaboration together, because I don't want to force you to act like you like something when you're making a video, right? Like I want you to genuinely like it, and then it'll come off to their audience as not even a sponsored tool. If they really do enjoy using this tool and they find it valuable, then it'll come off as, as more authentic. Like, hey, here's how I actually use it. I know Pieces is paying me because they're required to say that, but I actually use this in my day-to-day workflow. That's the best type of content.
Yeah, it's the content that's so good that you forget that it's a paid collaboration. Whilst those mid-roll, this video is sponsored by X, Y, and Z, you might get the views, but you won't get what you're looking for. It's too, if you want an ad, buy an ad. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
It just doesn't work. And yeah, like to Cole's point, it's a numbers game. You might have 100 influencers who fit the profile of what you're looking for, but once you reach out to them, a good percentage won't even reply. A lot will say that they don't have much use for the product. Another thing probably will not have the type. Then all of a sudden that 100 list gets down to like 4 or 5 people who are actually, tick all the boxes. And yeah, it is a lot of graft, a lot of manual, but if you nail it, it's absolutely worth it. As I said before, it'll make your quarter.
Exactly. Speaking of making a quarter, let's say you're particularly Series A, you're really starting to expand the marketing team. You're trying to build up one of these programs. What are some KPIs, some performance indicators you can attach to it and take to leadership, 3-6 months from now and be like, hey, here's how we're driving success via these programs? Is it a little bit softer? Is it one of those things where I see Carl already smiling. You've got...
Sure. So I always think it's funny when you ask a marketer about attribution and everyone just hides.
Yeah, totally.
I was like, don't ask me that. Don't give me integrity. Like you have your UTMs and all that kind of stuff, but like devs don't like UTMs. They like to just go to the corners of the internet and find your product whichever way they want, apart from clicking that link. One of the good things about content going live is you'll see from your telemetrics the vast majority will happen within 48 hours, 72 hours. So you can just go, we claim that, and that was due to this video going live, as long as there wasn't anything else happening in that space, or you weren't at AWS reInvent or something like but again, to use my overused word, it's agricultural in terms of attribution. But from a lot of our customers, they just ask them, you're just like, where did you find out about us? And it will be, I think I watched a video, I think I saw someone talking about it on LinkedIn or whatever. And that's the way. Sorry, it doesn't answer your question at all, but it's just...
No, it's a very similar answer that I give to clients. Yeah, it's like there's really 2 effective ways to market our space. It's community development, content creation and community development. And both of those, like, you got to have the stomach for it. They're long-term efforts. And it almost becomes more tied to like your leadership having a fundamental understanding of those practices rather than trying to prove it to them sometimes. So
yeah.
Like Cole, I know because of all the programs Pieces has got great leadership. They have a fundamental understanding of what good dev marketing looks like.
Oh, absolutely. And they know that, word of mouth is probably the best channel, right? You get other developers, even if it's sponsored, but a lot of times it's not. It's someone, seeing that sponsored video and then telling someone else. And that's impossible to measure. But it's the most effective in the developer space. That being said, just getting yourself out there, especially for a Series A company, is the most important thing, because like I said, there's a lot of different touch points. You can use UTMs as much as possible, but it becomes even more difficult to attribute when For example, at Pieces on July 10th, we'll have a big product hunt launch, and we'll be, formally announcing our Series A. Really exciting. So we're going to queue up a lot of different videos in different channels of marketing at the same time on the same day, right? To do, create sort of these step functions and growth where you're sort of compressing, and then all at once it helps to improve the number of users of your app. And so extremely difficult to measure all of those channels at once. And a little bit of it is faith, but you also just sort of have to do this quarter over quarter, identify, what channels are working, and then double down on that. If it's working, if it's not, then pull back a little bit, and kind of do it channel wide, as well as understand the diminishing returns of certain dev influencers and evangelists that are working with you. So if you have a long-term contract with someone for 6 months, for example, and the first couple of videos they take off, they do great, but then from then on, each webinar, each video, they're creating newsletter promo where they're using that same UTM link, you start to notice a bit of diminishing returns. Then you can start to look for to use them in different ways, or to find other dev influencers and things like that.
Yeah, totally. It's constant test and iteration. One of the other things I forgot to mention was when people do first think about influencer campaigns, they find the biggest name they can find, and then pay like an extortionate amount of money, which is putting all your eggs in that basket. And whoever the poor soul who actually put their hand up and said this is a good idea, it's you're the algorithm might not pick it up. The influencer might not have stuck the landing. So I always recommend is to just take that small budget and split it across as many influencers as you can. And and the other thing is what we measure as views. So if you have a good data insight into their audience, then you're like, look, X amount of this certain niche audience have viewed that video, because why else would they view that video? But if you're engaging with a very large technical influencer who might have lots of different tribes, and so that's not helpful to you. And so small is best sometimes.
Well, consistency is always key, right? If you get all your eggs in one basket, it makes it way more difficult to be consistent and publishing. You got to feed the beast. Like you said, that guy's got his kids coming up on summer vacation, all of a sudden you've got a month and a half gap in content or something like that, or communication. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
This has popped up in the chat in the QA. Rather than saying for QA, it might be good to address it now. So rather than you guys reaching out, let's say you're an individual, a developer that just absolutely loves a product. What do you think is the best way to get in hold with that organization if you wanted to sort of be more proactive in building that relationship and become an evangelist for them?
So do you mean like someone reaches out to you? How do you move forward with that? Or
no, so like if say I'm a developer, I love Pieces, I want to see how I can help you guys. What would you say is the most effective way for me to get in contact with you guys, prove myself to you that I'd be an effective resource, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think Discord is a great place to start. That's where most of our community is, as well as our teammates. So you can get direct access to us there. But, as a startup, we're extremely responsive. You can find us in a lot of different ways. We have a contact us forum. We have support forums and our Discord. You can join our live streams and just type out messages there. And you'll definitely be noticed, because we have those champions, those heroes who are always hanging out with us, and they're helping field questions and things like that. But we recognize, we know our community, right? We recognize when new people are coming in, and we want to support them in any way we can. So if you send a message to us, we'll probably set up a call and hop on with you and see how you are using Pieces and see how you could maybe work with us to help support us. I think, beyond that, just maybe tweet at us, then we'll probably see that too.
Totally. What do you see most your client base, Carl?
My recommendation was, if you can, just create some video content, and it doesn't matter if it gets 5 views or whatever. just that you have consistency of producing content week on week, and just doing really cool stuff with the product, and then that's going to get the attention, because I don't know if any other dev tool company is always screaming out for content creators who actually are passionate and don't get burned out, and they're building an audience. So even if it's early on in your content journey, it's just go out there and just make stuff.
I don't think there's a single org that turned down usable content. It's constantly a need across the board. So let's end on the forward thinking. Where are you guys seeing the space move? What are sort of the emerging trends you're catching right now when it comes to evangelists, influencers within the technical space? You sort of touched on TikTok a little bit. I know that's been a hot button lately. Yeah.
My wild one is, I feel like user generated content is coming for our world. We haven't quite figured out what that looks like, but I think in the next few years we're going to hear a lot of B2B UGC and just
totally
not weaponizing. Weaponizing is a strong word, but certainly giving the tools to the community to spin out short form videos, and then you put a bit of paid ad spend behind it, and then meritocracy rules, and then you've got 3 winners, and then all of a sudden you really double down on those. I feel that's coming, and no one's doing it yet because no one knows how to.
Yeah, this is a tough question because there's so many different ways to look at it. In terms of channels, daily.dev seems to be, a good looking new channel where developers are writing blog posts and sort of rivaling Hashnode and some others there. But in terms of, the actual marketplaces for connecting with developers, Yard is always improving. I love Yard. There might be some implementation of AI to help connect you with developers because, AI is able to understand you as a company, able to understand the content creators and the type of things that they're putting out to match up those niches together. That could be some sort of interesting opportunity. And I think, short form has been increasing, obviously, but I think that there's a little bit of a shift towards back towards long form again. I think developers, they like to have these 40 video series on, how to get started with Next.js or some technical topic, and live streams as well. People like to feel like they're a part of a community. They want to get updates from specific people. So it's up to the brand to, curate the community, make sure you're building in public and having your leadership and your, developers showing themselves and talking about the things that they're working on and being very transparent with the community. And in return, people want to keep up with you and understand what's going on. So interactive content, just collaborating directly with your community and building in public, I think is the future of this.
Good shit. The live stream thing is definitely that there feels a bit of momentum there, and that's actually a good entry point for someone who doesn't have a huge amount of budget. It's much cheaper to sponsor live streams. You might not get the reach or the distribution, but it's a nice kind of proof of concept for your team, and definitely worth exploring.
It's just like Twitch and video games years ago, and everyone's like, who's going to sit around and watch other people game? And now it's just huge. It's absolutely massive. Yeah. First Q&A question here. This comes up on every single one of these webinars I do, and I understand why. And it's always tied to how's AI going to affect this particular space moving forward. And there tends to be similar answers, no matter like the section of dev marketing you're talking about. I have my own perspectives and opinions working specifically in the content space. I'd be curious to hear what you guys have to say. I find that it's difficult for AI to replace a true personality or evangelist. Sure. Yeah.
That's probably why this space is growing the way it is, because very well. Right now, it's very, very hard to replicate as someone. But also, with influencers, they've built this up over years and years and years and years. So people buy from people, and so yeah, I think it actually elevates the importance of influencers rather than being at risk of being replaced.
Agreed.
So
it's like causing the boom. It's why we're here. Yeah.
So we're working on publishing a new white paper called 16 Reasons Why AI Won't Replace Developers. And so it's sort of it's a deep dive on why augmentation is going to be the preferred path over complete automation of those human developers. And I think the same thing is going to happen in sort of the DevRel side of this space. We're able to create screen recordings with Screen Studio and, showcase some of the new features that we're creating and really anything that we want to show on our own YouTube. But AI has helped in sort of, generating better transcripts. And if you're doing a live stream just like this, you're able to use certain Adobe tools to chop up, clips so that it's showing the right people at the right time. And it really automates some of the video editing process, which is a big part of content creation. And in terms of the actual evangelism, I already talked about how AI could potentially help connect you with DevRel people. But I think Carl's right. People can kind of sniff out AI writing when they see it. And so having that personal touch is important.
Well, Google is actually fighting against it. I don't know if you guys saw that, like the SEO news, that leak a couple of weeks ago.
Did.
Yeah, it's we view it as a tool. I oversimplify it and compare it to like using your text and your TI-89 on your math homework. Like if you, it's not going to create the video for you or like create the influencer content, but if can you use it to like crank out a script real quick, which allows you to record faster? Totally. Give you your speaking guide. Maybe it helps you with creating like the image overlays and some of the editing work. Sure. Is it going to create the engaging content itself? No. And like say Google's tried to kill like not kill AI generated content, but push the more educational content forward anyway. So like I said, it's a great tool in the toolbox, I think, is how most people are viewing it moving forward.
Totally.
Yeah.
Great.
This last question here, we sort of touched on this. Just we'll wrap up today's conversation with it though. Do you usually reach out to the influencers yourself, or do they offer to work with you? We talked about this more in the beginning of the conversation. I guess which option tends to be more successful or authentic is how this user ended this question. I'd say probably just depends.
It depends. You probably get lower profile influencers and content creators reaching out to you. That's it, same quality, just don't have the distribution yet or the audience built up. And then the bigger they get, then they don't need any help in getting sponsorships. There will be, they'll probably only do one activation a quarter, and then that's where the relationship based stuff is really important. Of like, hey, we have something in mind for you in September. Keep that free. Don't take anything else. And it's definitely outbound is the only way to go once you get to a certain level.
Yeah, I mean, I think inbound, inbound is obviously going to be the most authentic. Like they use your product, they love it. It tends to sort of group into certain communities, though, right? Like because of word of mouth and things like that. You have a hit video from an Indian influencer, for example. You might blow up in India, and then a lot of people from those communities are reaching out to write your blog posts and be evangelists for you. And so if you want to break into the European market, you might have to do some outbound to find content creators in that, with audiences that are based in those geographies. And beyond geographies, just certain niches as well. If you are interested in a certain feature of the product, then those people will tend to reach out to you. Again, I think it's both. You really have to be a good salesman in some aspects. If you're doing outbound, you got to be able to demo your product and ask questions and find, help answer their questions about how it might be able to be, used in their workflow, so that these content creators aren't going in blind and they're actually excited to try out your tool and work for you.
It comes down to research as well. If you really research your shortlist, then you have a very good idea that this person is going to be interested in it.
Right.
So, but what we found is that kind of this blast approach of, people emailing 500 random influencers and then getting downhearted when people are like, "What is this? Why is this relevant to me? Don't email me again." And that's that can be a bit of a bad sign.
Guys, thank you so much for joining today. I really appreciate it. Definitely everyone listening, go check out both Yard and Pieces, both hyper relevant to the conversation. Pieces is just a tool I think anyone in our space can take advantage of just in general. And Carl is the pro on what we're literally talking about today. So go check out Yard too. Just drop their LinkedIn's and their websites in the chat. Otherwise, if you joined late, we'll send out the recording today. Sometime later this week, probably. We'll send out an edited version on YouTube. Otherwise, really appreciate y'all's time today.
Cheers. Thank you very much for having me, Clayton.
Yeah. Yep. Have a good one, everyone.
Had a blast. Thanks, Clayton.
Cheers.
Bye.